Welcome to Had to Be There, the podcast that allows you to explore the world's greatest destinations through the stories of those who have been there. Here to ignite the wanderlust within, your host and favorite travel planner, Kelly Acevedo.
Good day, mates. Welcome back to the Had to Be There podcast. I'm your host, Kelly, and this is episode 73. In today's episode, we are taking a journey down under. I am actually really excited about this because we've had guests on who are from Australia. We've had guests on who have traveled through Australia, but we've never had an episode specifically set in Australia. So I am pumped for you guys to meet my friend Brandon and hear his story. I think it's a really good one. Before we jump into that, I will put my Vacations by Kelly hat on for just a moment to remind you that I am a certified Aussie specialist. So if you hear Brandon's story today and you're like, man, I would love to check Australia off of my bucket list, but I don't know where to start, hit me up. I would love to help you plan your Australian getaway. And now, without any further ado, let's welcome Brandon. Brandon, welcome to the Had to Be There podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to chat with you today. Yeah. Before we get started, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little about you?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Brandon. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, which is why I like to travel. So there's not a whole lot going on. In fact, one of the travel bureau's like promotional slogans, if you will, was like, "It's not for everybody." Omaha, it's not for everybody. And so, I live here. I'm a pastor here in the area, so work with kids and students. Really love doing that. Feel like it's exactly what I was designed to be doing. And so, it's a lot of fun, but it's a really high energy job. And so it requires a lot of rest to be able to maintain and stick around. I'm a little older than the typical youth and kids pastor, so I like to unplug from time to time.
Fair enough. You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
So you're in Omaha now. Is that where you're from originally?
No, actually, I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. I lived there until we left Charleston 7 years ago. Right at this point,
I
think actually 7 years ago last week. And so we moved to Colorado from there. We were in Colorado for 2 years. I was on staff with the church plant there, and then moved to Omaha for this role.
Okay, so you've been traveling quite a bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Did you do a lot of traveling growing up as a kid? Did you take vacations and all that?
Actually, we did not travel a ton as a family. Most of our, if not all of our trips were car trips. And so from Charleston, we would go to Myrtle Beach a lot. If we were really feeling crazy, we would drive down to Orlando or somewhere in Florida. I think the farthest away we ever got as a family growing up, we did drive down to Key West. Which is it's a good trip. So that one was probably like, if I were saying like our biggest travel experience from growing up, it was driving to Key West, which is crazy. We drove straight there, which I think my sister was probably 6 and I think I was 8. We might've been 8 and 10. I don't remember exactly, but it was a 16-hour car ride all the way there. And then on the way back, we were able to like make some stops on the way. So we made the trip home a little more bearable.
Yeah.
But there we were like, all right, let's get all the way there and then take it easy on the way back. And so, no, it was good. And then when I was 18, my dad, my stepmom, my sister, and I went to Jamaica, and that was the first time I had ever been on a plane. And it was the last time I'd ever been on a plane until I got married.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was there ever a point on any of your travels that you can pinpoint as like, this is when I was bitten by the travel bug. This is when I knew I wanted to see and experience other places.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife's family are travelers. They've been her parents have been everywhere. I mean, they just got back from Europe pretty recently. And so when I started, when I got married and was part of that family, like traveling was just something that we did. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is awesome. I love it. And so we went, I think that first, she and I honeymooned to San Diego, and we loved that. And then we were able to go to Hawaii with the family, went to Cabo, we've been to Australia, we've been, just places like that, which are super fun. And so I think it was at that point really where I was like, there's way more to see than the East Coast. And I gotta get out a little more. So I've done a lot of traveling since then. I really love it.
That's amazing. So how did you end up in Omaha?
It's a fun question. You know, when we moved here, we told people, oh yeah, we just moved from Colorado. And most people were like, why?
Why? Yeah. Fair question, Brandon.
And it is. It's a very fair question. And I'm not hating on Omaha. It's great. Like it's a really good place to raise a family. Schools are incredible. It's not a fast-paced, slow lifestyle, but it's also not like super boring. There's plenty of things to do, but it's just not. Most people don't even think of it. In fact, when I lived in Colorado, I couldn't have told you where Nebraska was on a map. And so that was not a geography major by any stretch, but at the same time, it's like you just don't think about Nebraska. You know, they say that you've got coastal cities, landlocked cities, double landlocked cities, and then Nebraska, because literally it's 4 layers removed from any large body of water. And so I was working at a church in Charleston, and I just kind of felt like it was time for a change. Like it was time to move on, do something new. And I had this friend in Colorado who reached out. He was planting a church, and he's like, why don't you come join the team and move to Colorado? And we're like, all right, that sounds cool. So prayed about it for a long time and figured, well, let's give this a shot. I was on that staff for 2 years, and it was all sort of a support raised position. I don't know if you're kind of familiar with like a missionary type job or role where my family and friends were supporting my salary, and that was supposed to be a limited time thing. So for 2 years, and the goal was to go on staff at that church full time. That was our plan. You know, we were going to do that. We were excited about it. And then the time came, and the church was like, hey man, we're sorry. It's just not there. Like the budget's just not there, and we can't do it. And so that was really hurtful, and not like I'm not mad at anybody, but it just kind of stung, you know. You get it. It's like this was my plan, and now all of a sudden I have no plan, and in 3 months to kind of rewrite my story. And so we just started reaching out. I knew I wanted to get back to youth ministry. I was doing more creative stuff then, which obviously creative ministry is all across all of them, but it was very, very focused on that. And I was like, I really want to start being, face to face with people again. Yeah. And so we started reaching out to friends and connections, and we had one random connection here in Omaha that ended up being the thing. So here we are.
Wow.
You know? Yeah.
Meant to be.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
So tell me where you're taking us today.
Yeah. So one of my favorite trips was to Australia. My sister-in-law got married, and we were able to go to the wedding, like the whole family. It was a really long flight.
Yeah.
We were traveling with a 1-year-old at the time, and so that was super. No, she was younger than that. I don't think she was even 1 yet. She was a tiny little thing because we were lucky to get. We thankfully got the row of seats with the bassinets, and so we just put her in there, and she's been a traveler from day one, so she's always super great. We joke when we drove to Colorado, they were awesome in the car. I have 2 kids. They were both great the whole time we were in the car, and when we got out of the car is when it all hit the fan. I mean, we'd stop at a restaurant. They're standing on tables. It's crazy. So they've been good travelers from that point. But yeah, that trip was just a really, really memorable experience for me. It's the farthest away that I had been to that point. I've been to New Zealand since then. But yeah, Australia was probably the trip where I was like, okay, all of this world is worth seeing, you know, because for me, I kind of thought Australia would be really cool, but there's this massive thing standing in between you and an opportunity to go there, and it's 15 hours in an airplane, and no matter how great the sights are, there's just no getting used to that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
So take us through this had to be there experience that you had in Australia.
Yeah. So it's really funny. It's kind of a funny story. My wife tells me that it's one of the best stories that I have. And I love collecting stories. I actually have a podcast where I just talk about random stories and invite other people in to do the same thing. And she's like, this is the one that she likes the most. And what's funny is she wasn't really a part of it. So we're obviously all there in Australia getting ready for the wedding. But I was in school at the time. Like I was finishing up my degree. And so I was taking classes online. So I had deadlines and all these things that I had to do. And I couldn't do them before because they're like discussion posts. So you have to post them certain times, certain days. Yep. And because of the length of the trip, if I just didn't do it, I wasn't going to be able to pass those classes. So there was really no like, okay, I'll just suck it up for this week, try to do really well on some other stuff. Had to be done. So her sister is like in the creative world as well. So I've never dreamed that would be difficult to do. I just need to get online, like Wi-Fi. That's it. I got my own my computer. Everything's done. It's ready to go. I just got to log in and upload it. And so we get to her house, and I wake up that morning to get ready to upload some assignments. And I'm like, hey, how do I get on the Wi-Fi? And she's like, we don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm like, cool. And this was a while. Cool. No doubt. And so this was a while back where like, if you use your phone in another country, it's going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money, much less you use it to upload schoolwork. You know, it's going to be crazy. And so we're like, okay, probably cheaper to retake the class than it is to use the Wi-Fi for 5 minutes. And so she's like, there's a coffee shop down the road that has it. And I'm like, great. How do I get there? She's like, go downstairs, walk out. You'll see a bus stop literally right in front of my apartment. Get on the bus, 2 stops down. This is the coffee shop. And I'm like, all right, easy. We had paid for these public transportation cards, so we could use any public transit for those 2 weeks, unlimited, basically, which shout out to Sydney, Australia, and their public transit system because it is top notch.
Nice.
Yeah, so I get on this bus. 2 stops down, I get off the bus, and there it is, coffee shop right there. Beautiful. I'm like, this plan is going perfectly.
What could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. And so I walk into the coffee shop, order my drink. I'm like, hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? And they're like, we don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm like, what is this country? I mean, like, this is not, this is Sydney. This is Australia. I'm not in the third world country, you know. They tout how highly developed they are. And they are. I love it. But this coffee shop also did not have Wi-Fi. And I think that they're so focused in on like people, you know, they're like, why would you possibly need Wi-Fi in a coffee shop? You should be sitting with a friend talking to them. And I'm like, well, I also have to just upload these schoolwork assignments so that I can have fun with my friends. So that'd be great. And I'm like, is there anywhere nearby? And they're like, not really. You're going to want to probably go into the city and maybe find like McDonald's or something like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks. So I leave the coffee shop. I go back to the bus stop to go back to the apartment. And the bus pulls up, and I said, hey, will this bus take me to Olympic Park? And he's like, yeah, it is. Hop on. I'm like, great. So I get on the bus. We're staying in Olympic Park, which is where the Olympics happen. They turned all of that into like houses, condos, apartments kind of area after that. So it's a really, really cool area. So I get on this bus, and I just zone out. I want to see I might as well just see the sights between here and there. It was, you know, neat to see the left side of the road. Now let's see the other left side of the road. And so we get on this bus, and I'm just like paying attention to the surroundings and stuff, and none of it looks familiar. And I'm like, it's fine. It's probably fine because I've only been down this road one time ever, and it was on the other side. And so 2 stops later, I look up. Mathematically speaking, I should have been back at the apartment. Right. And I was not. I wasn't there. And I'm looking around, and none of this stuff looks familiar. It just looks like these random buildings, and I know kind of which way I needed to go because we were also a stop away from the ferry, so the harbor was like right where I needed to be. I see no signs of Sydney Harbor. I see no signs of water. I see none of that stuff. All I see are buildings. And I'm that's weird. Maybe we took a slightly different route back. You know, you'd think like, it's a bus, probably runs in a loop, that kind of thing.
Sure.
At some point I'll end up. Let's just enjoy the ride. I've got time. My family expected me to be gone for a certain amount of time to do this schoolwork. Let's just see what happens. And so I'm on this bus, and I'm just kind of like looking at the scenes, looking at the sights, all these buildings. And then I realized we're kind of getting farther and farther away from the coast or from the harbor. And I'm like, I don't know if this is right. But again, I'm on a bus. Like, what's happening here? So I just roll with it. And people are getting off, people are getting on, like people are talking. Everyone's just having these conversations. And then all of a sudden the bus stops. I look up, still not at Olympic Park. And so I just look back down at what I'm doing to get ready to go to the next stop. And the guy looks back and sees me on the bus alone. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that no one else was on the bus. And he goes, that was the last stop, mate. And I'm like, cool. I thought we were going to Olympic Park. And he says,
remember when I got on and asked you?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, we did. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then in my head, all of a sudden, mathematically, it all works out. Olympic Park is a very big place. And I did not ask him specifically, like, are we going to this stop at Olympic Park? So we hit the other side of Olympic Park at some point, and I just didn't recognize it because we were in a totally different area, a different part of that. And so I'm like, okay. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, feel this wave of just, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea where I'm at. I have no idea to get back where I came from. This bus is obviously not running in a loop because there's a last stop, which means, And I'm like, wonder what happens next. Can I get off the bus and get back on? Where's the closest bus stop? And so I'm like, hey, I have no clue where I'm at. Can you help me figure out, like, if I could just find Wi-Fi, I can get in touch with my people. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, there's like a shopping mall. If you go up 2 blocks, take a left, go over, there's a mall there. You'll probably find something in there that would offer Wi-Fi. And I'm like, great. So I get out, and I'm in the middle of downtown Sydney, still having no idea how I got there, And so I walk up, and I find this mall, and thankfully there's a McDonald's in the mall that has Wi-Fi. So I go upstairs. I text
McDonald's
my wife.
for the win.
I know. I'm loving it. So rescued by the golden arches.
Exactly.
Some French fries, some Wi-Fi, and send out an SOS. Yeah. As a number, I think that's like the number 12 combo now. It's not on the menu. You got to ask for it.
Right.
But anyway, so I'm in this mall. I finally get Wi-Fi. I send a message to my family. I am able to look at like Google Maps and figure out where I'm at. Yeah. And I was not far from the harbor, the ferry stop that we were going to go to a couple hours later. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to do my schoolwork from here, and I'll meet you guys at the ferry stop. And I'm like, what time will you be there? They tell me what time I'll be there. And so from there, it's like, this is great. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not in this, tense fear mode. All of a sudden, I am right inside of who I feel like I'm created to be, right? Like, one of my core 5 values is adventure, and I went from, like, I'm in danger to, okay, let's see what happens next.
Yeah, let's roll with it.
The Had to Be There podcast is brought to you by Vacations by Kelly, where your host becomes your travel agent. As a proud affiliate of Academy Travel, Kelly specializes in Disney destinations and can help with all non-Disney excursions worldwide as well. When you book with Kelly, you're getting much more than a travel agent. You're getting a personalized concierge-level travel partner. And the best part? Her services are completely free. It's true. So when you're ready to make your next travel dream a reality, Vacations by Kelly is ready to make it happen. Visit hadtobethere.net/vacations to get started.
And so I upload my school assignments. I probably got some French fries. I don't remember. And then I head out, and I'm like, all right. So now my whole job is to get from here to the ferry stop in 2 hours and see some of downtown Sydney on the way. Yeah. And so I walk out. I was able to like download and screenshot kind of some of the routes for public transit. And so it took me from that mall 2 more buses and a train to get to the ferry. I was so far away from anywhere I was supposed to be. But just on the way, I tried to pay really close attention to what I saw and what was around me. And I was able to notice just, I don't know, how beautiful that city is. It's like, I don't know, it's probably as big and developed as like Chicago. I don't know if I'd say New York, but maybe it was Chicago or Nashville or something like that. Yeah. But it's not nearly as busy. It's not nearly as like rushed. And so
Yeah.
I just kind of enjoyed that ride. And I was like, when I got a great story, I've seen some cool things that I probably wouldn't have seen because my family and her family, they're not into the same things that I am. I had 2 hours by myself, which is just awesome. I can just do that. You know what I mean? And, and got to have some fun conversations on the way because there's some friendly people out there that are like, hey, what are you up to? And I'm like, well, funny story. Spent 2 hours on a bus for some French fries, but hey, here we are. And so it was cool. What I noticed on the other side is when I finally like reconnected with my family, we had something to do that day, probably wedding things, sat at a restaurant, got lunch, all that kind of stuff. And then it was just like, all right, you guys can go explore. And my wife's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you, this is here, this is here, this is over here. We could do this, we could do that. And we ended up having a great day, all because I got lost. And so I think if I were boiling it down to like why I appreciate that story so much and what you could take away from it, if you will, is just like, man, let yourself get lost in an adventure every now and again. Like, let yourself get lost in a city and really discover what that city has to offer and what is there for you specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great lesson in there. So why do you think people everywhere should add Australia to their bucket lists?
One, it's gorgeous. Just like looking at it, you can ride the ferry. You could fill an entire vacation just riding the ferry. Like it's going to take you to fun stops. The bridge is cool. Their zoo is incredible. It's like it is a ferry stop. So the ferry will just drop you off at the zoo, and it's built up this hill. So you have like animal enclosure, and then the backdrop of that is the Sydney Harbor, looking right across at like the Opera House.
Yeah.
So there's just some really awesome things to see there. And that's just Sydney. After my sister-in-law got married, we had another week in Australia, and we were able to go to some other spots, like Manly Beach, and we went to I think it's called the Blue Mountains or something like that, where there's cave explorations and all that kind of stuff. So it's got big city, it's got mountains, it's got literally everything, and the food's really good too. It just be careful because they also put like beets on everything, which is kind of weird.
How funny.
Yeah.
Do you feel like
or go ahead.
Do you feel like the time that you spent there was enough, or do you think you'll be back someday?
I think I would like to go back someday. Like I said, we were pretty rushed that first week of just like helping her get ready for the wedding, and all that kind of stuff. And then the second week was pretty cool. Like we saw some really great things, but I think there's so much more to explore. We were also traveling with some friends who had very different ideas of what they wanted to do, and so that led to some tension here and there. So I'd like to go back with just my wife and just explore it that way. But
definitely.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of running tally as to how many places you've been able to visit?
I don't. And I think, as we were talking earlier, I'm like telling you these places that I've been, and I left New Zealand off the list. I'm like, how did I forget that? I should, I should. I've done the thing every now and again where I read through like the U.S. states and check off the ones that I've been to, but I haven't done it. I haven't done a good job of that, Just recently I started collecting my own stories, if you will. Like every time I have this random memory, I like write it down on this spreadsheet and use those as a lot of content, like kind of idea generators. But I should totally have a travel log,
Yeah. So, Brandon, are you ready to play Passport Picks?
Let's go.
Tell us your favorite from all your trips. It's time to play Passport Picks. Passport Picks.
All right, let's get into it. What is your favorite destination that you visited, and why does it stand out to you?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna ask this, and I still didn't know what I was gonna say until. Well, I still don't. We'll see what happens. But I think if I had to choose one, I think I would probably pick Hawaii because it hits a lot of my boxes of things that I just really love. Like It's got the beaches and the sand and the reef and all that good stuff. It also has really, really good food, which is, I just love food so much, which is a source of tension sometimes for traveling, because the rest of my family doesn't appreciate it on the same level. So they're always like, oh yeah, we could just go grab something. And I'm like, no, we're on vacation. Like, I will eat good.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I think Hawaii, it's been really cool. I'm a big coffee person. I love coffee as well. So Hawaii has some incredible coffee farms. We were able to visit one of those a while back and roast our own coffee and bring it home. So I don't know. It just has a special place in my heart too.
That's a great answer. To that end, which destination has had the best beaches?
Yeah, so I'm from the East Coast, and I love East Coast beaches, but I just don't think you can touch Hawaii. They're, the white sand, and you can see coral reef. The water's clear. Australia's beaches are really nice, too. They're just a little more the ones that I was at were less like beach with the waves and all that kind of stuff, because we're on that side of the country, but so they're on par, but Hawaii probably has the best beaches.
I thought so.
Yeah. I wish I could say Charleston, because that's where I'm from and I love it.
Right.
But
right.
Charleston beaches they can't compete with either one on. Honestly.
I mean, that's fair. I don't think Charleston will blame you for that.
Yeah, no, they're like, we got the history. They can have the beach, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. What is your favorite way to immerse yourself in a new culture when you're traveling?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be surprised by this answer based on my last one, but it is the food. It's the food, which is why the tension with my in-laws happens on a regular basis. I'm like, guys, you like to see these places, and I get it. I want to do that. I like to taste them. Like, I like to know what the food is and stuff like that. So if we can find a happy medium here, you know what I mean? So it is the food. I try to stay super local. I try not to eat at chains. Except for In-N-Out if you're in California, like that one's okay. But otherwise I try to stay local. And then if we're anywhere near water, I probably eat seafood for most of the meals,
All right.
Yeah.
I love it. I had a guest on recently who would take a food tour in every place that she visited. Nice. So they would like bike to different, little dives or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's awesome. It's so funny. My with the in-laws, and I'm not trying to bash them. They're great. I wouldn't have been nearly as many places without them. But just the one thing, I can't figure out why we don't jive on the food. So we went to Carmel, California not too long ago, and they really wanted Italian food. And so I'm like, cool, let me look into it. And they're like, no, we found a place. Well, so we went to this Italian place, and it was awesome. But right across the street was another Italian place that had a Michelin star. And
oh my god!
And I'm like, how did we go? Why did we do this?
Right, we're so close.
Yeah, I know. And so it's one of those things where I'm just like, oh man, I want to experience these things and taste these foods, and it's just like so close.
When we went to Puerto Rico for my first visit, that's where my husband is from. Okay. So we spent a lot of time with like his family and stuff. Yeah. And one of his aunts and uncles came out to meet us in San Juan to take us to lunch. Okay. And his aunt, the whole ride was like, you are going to love this place. You can get rice. You can get, if you want American food, you can eat American food. If you want Puerto Rican food, you can eat Puerto Rican food. And I was like, oh, okay. Like so excited. And we pulled into the parking lot and it was a Sizzler.
That's awesome.
Bless her heart. She was so excited about it.
When we went to Australia, we were asking people where some good food was, and they're like, oh, we got this new place that you might want to try. It's called it's like newer. It's called Outback Steakhouse. Oh. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought that they were
from a new place.
They're not from here. And it's like, spoiler alert, Outback is not actually from Australia.
What? My whole life is a lie.
I know. Who knew?
Right. Which destination that you visited has had the best arts scene?
Yeah, I think that's probably New York City. Like, there's just so much going on there. Art is everywhere. So it's been cool. Surprisingly, Sydney had a lot of cool stuff too. And their scene was a little more public. Like, you could just, like, they would have these paintings and stuff in the malls and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think for quantity and quality, probably, New York, hands down. It's just so much and so good.
Yeah. Gotta love New York.
Yeah, I do.
Do you have a favorite travel tip or hack or piece of advice that you've picked up on your journeys?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if it's practical enough and how to do it, but if you can figure it out, let me know. Because I think back to the trip that my wife and I took to New York. We went there to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary, and we did all the things. We went to a Broadway show. We went to the top of the Rock and saw the 9/11 memorial, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of noticed, you kind of pick up on the vibe of New York and how, like, New Yorkers sort of carry themselves, and it's fast paced. They don't wait for the once the traffic light turns yellow, that's when you can start crossing the street. You don't have to wait for the crosswalk, all this stuff. And so I'm noticing these little things, like everyone's wearing, the business people are wearing like suits, but then they've got running shoes on, but the loafers are in the backpack, like that's just how, let's be practical. Let's be quick. Let's keep this city moving. And if you pay attention to that kind of stuff, you kind of start to do that. Like, you kind of mirror those things.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm pretty quick at that stuff. And we were in New York for 2 days, and someone stopped and asked me for directions. And I was like, I am not from here. And they're like, we thought you were. Like, you just look like you belong.
Blended right in,
like,
yeah.
Okay, cool. And so I think that's my travel hack, is figure out how to, I mean, not to be fake or anything, but figure out how to be all in, when in Rome, right? Like,
exactly.
When in NYC, you walk fast, head down, keep moving forward, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And so I think the more you can sort of be like the people there, the more of an experience you're going to have. If people in Hawaii think you're local, they're going to go out of the way to give you, like, special treatment, and again, not in a negative way. It's just that, I don't know, you kind of, doors open a little bit more. Yeah.
They see that you're trying to embrace the culture.
Right. It's just like, one of those tips that people give, if you can speak another language, like, say, like, I'm trying to learn how to speak Spanish. If you are speaking Spanish to a Spanish speaking individual and you realize they speak English, don't switch to English if you don't have to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, honor the people, honor the place. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best thing, is just, like, how can you connect with people? Because there's always sights to see. There's always things to do. Sure. But when you connect with people, that's where the real stories come from, because they're going to point you towards the things that are memory makers, That's why we went to the top of the Rock instead of the Empire State Building, because people were like, the top of the Rock is way better. It's not as crowded. Do that instead. And so we did,
Yeah, great tip. Brandon, is there anything currently at the top of your bucket list that you haven't been able to cross off yet?
Yes. I really want to go to Seattle. So if we're talking stateside, like, I really want to go to Seattle. Again, just love coffee. Starbucks story. I want to experience that. I've been a Seahawks fan for a long time, so would love to see a game. Oh my God, my
dad is a Seahawks fan. He's gonna love this episode.
Nice. I would love to go to CenturyLink, just to experience that, like, on a sports level. So that's one. And then on the other side, if we were talking international, I really want to go to London and just see that. I love fish and chips, but stuff like that. That's one of my places as well. So, and there's a list. My wife and I have a pretty long list of places that we want to go, but for her, London's the number one, and for me, it's those two. She's not super interested in Seattle, but we'll get there. We'll get there one day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So tell me about My Awesome Life. Your My Awesome Life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a podcast called This Awesome Life. I wrote a blog called This Awesome Life. The blog is really where I take those random stories that I talked about and I kind of expound on them. I share the story, and then I'm like, hey, this is what I learned from that story, or there was one recently. A lot of times I'll just start writing the story and wait for the rest of it to come out. And I wrote this one, and I could not figure out what I was supposed to learn from it, and it was really frustrating. And finally I was like, I think the lesson in this one is like slow down and pay attention in the moment because I didn't learn anything from it, and I should have, you know. So that's the kind of the blog aspect is my personal stories. And then I started this podcast to invite other people into that process. And so I interview a guest each episode, and I ask them, hey, just tell me one random story from your life, how it helped you figure out a little bit more about who you were created to be and what we can learn from it together. So yeah, those are the two things. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up for you? What's cooking?
Yeah, awesome. Well, like I said, the blog and the podcast take a lot of that, like sort of content energy, and I post a new blog post every week, and then on Thursdays I post like a throwback post of like, hey, here's another. This was one from a long time ago, and here's something else we can learn from it. And then the podcast comes out every 2 weeks. But then on top of that, I am almost done with my first book, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
It's written, it's been edited by my editor. Now we're just doing cover design, layout, and stuff like that. And so that should be coming out in October. Yeah, I'm super stoked about it. It's called Magic in the Mug, and it's like some of my coffee stories and how we can figure out if we follow coffee through its process from planting all the way to the cup, we can learn a lot about ourselves through the same process that coffee goes through.
Oh my God, I love that.
Awesome.
Can't wait for that to come out.
Where
can we find you?
So I have my website is just brandonhare.me. You can also go to thisawesome.life. They both take you to the same place. But that's the easiest way. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All of them are at Brandon Hare. So really easy to find me. And I have a YouTube channel as well that I'm starting to get off the ground. But it's just, it's the podcast right now. It's just that. So.
Yeah, awesome. I'll definitely include links to everything in the episode show notes. Awesome. You have been such a treat to chat with. It was so nice meeting you.
Yeah, it was so fun.
I hope that you and maybe your wife will come back after you finally get to London.
Yeah,
and
definitely
share one of those experiences with us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to.
Thanks, Brandon. Take care.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to show your support is to rate or review us on whatever platform you're listening. And if this episode left you feeling like you just had to be there, reach out to Kelly to start planning an adventure of your own. Don't forget to follow us at HadToBeThere203 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And visit our website, www.hadtobethere.net. Until next time, get out there and make your own had to be there memories.